In this section, we're going to be talking about more applications of percents, specifically simple and compound interest. So what this applies to is interest rates on things like loans for cars and homes, or interest that you might make on a savings account or something like that. So this is a way to become a better consumer so people don't try to rip you off because you know what you're doing. First thing you need to do is learn these terms. So I don't want to read all of these to you. So you might want to just pause the video at this point and make sure you understand what each of these things are, because I'm going to be referring to them a lot throughout this video. Okay, so the first type of interest we're going to look at is simple interest. And again, that was defined up above. So the total amount of simple interest, which we abbreviate I, is equal to the principal times the annual interest rate, which needs to be written as a decimal, times the time, which is always in years. So if it's a portion of a year, you need to figure out what portion of the year it is, remembering that there are 12 months in a year. Okay, so let's try some of these. All right, so the first one, we've got the principal is 120, the rate is 6%, and we're talking about 1 year. So we're just going to plug all of this in. So the principal is 120. The rate is 6%, and we want to write that as a decimal, 0.06. And the time is 1 year, so we just put 1. Okay, so 120 times 0.06 times 1, and when you put these in your calculator, you can just put them all one times the next is $7.20. So in this case, we've got interest for 1 year on this amount of money would be $7.20. All right, so the next one is not a whole year. So what we want to do with the 9 months is we want to turn it into a fraction of a year. So there are 9 months in this particular situation, and that is out of 12 because we want to make it with respect to a year. So 9 out of 12, if you want to reduce this, which you don't have to reduce it, because when you put it in your calculator, it'll reduce it for you. So we get 3/4, or you can leave it as 9/12. It does not matter. All right, so we get the principal is 1,600. The rate is 4.5%, so you're going to go back 2 places with a decimal point, 0.045, or divide by 100. And the time is 3/4 of a year, or 0.75, however you want to do it. So you could replace this in your calculator with 0.75. But if you just in your calculator say 1,600 times 0.045 times 3 divide by 4, it should give you the right answer. So you can do that all in one big long step if you would like, which is what I always prefer because it keeps me from making little mistakes along the way. So that becomes $54. So $54 in 9 months is the interest that you would make. All right, the next one, we've got the principal is 95.20, the rate is 3%, and the time is 5 years, so we're going to have 9,520, and the rate is 3%, so that's 0.03, and the time is 5 years, so you just put a 5 in here, and that's it. Just put it in your calculator, make sure you put it in right, and you get $1,428. Pretty good. All right, so you make $1,428 in just 5 years on less than $10,000. All right, so it's time for you to try this. Don't forget that these templates are in OneNote, so you don't have to rewrite all these problems. But why don't you give these 3 a try and then pause it and come back when you're done, take a look at the answer. Okay, so the first one is very straightforward. 250 times 0.08 times 1 is $20. The next one, you've got 4 months, not 4 years, so be careful. That's 4/12 of a year. And this time I didn't simplify. I just wanted you to see you can just put 4/12 in there, and when you put it in your calculator, it works it out just the same. So 3,000 times 0.07 times 4/12. And the way you would do that is 3,000 times 0.07 times 4 divide by 12, and then hit the enter key. All right, the last one, everything's the same. You're going to put 4 years as the time, and you get 1,440. So most of the problems you're going to see are going to be word problems, so you just need to figure out what's what. So in the first example, everything was given, P, R, and T. Now you have to figure it out. So I'm going to go through and just highlight all of the information, and we have to figure out which is which. So the principal is $3,400. That's the money that was borrowed, the beginning amount. So $3,400, $3,400. The rate is 5%. So I'm going to go ahead and write that as a rate instead of as a percent. And then for 6 months. So the time in this case, I'm going to put 6 months. We need it in terms of years, so that's going to be 1/2 of a year. Okay, 1/2 of a year, or 0.5. Okay, so you can say 0.5 if you would like. All right, so now we just have to plug everything in. So we get 3,400 times 0.05 times 0.5, or 1/2, however you'd like to enter that there. And when you plug this into your calculator, you should get $85. All right, the next one is for you to try. So pause the video and give it a shot and come back and see how you did. Okay, so I highlighted the important information, but I can't say enough how important it is in these problems, especially when we start getting to compound interest, how important it is to say P, R, T, everything listed there, and go find it and put it into the proper form. So P is money, rate is in a decimal form, and time is in years. Okay, so you're going to plug all of this in, and it doesn't matter if you use 0.25 or 3/12 or 1/4, all of those are the same thing. So you could put any of those in here, and you get $84. Okay, so now we're moving into the total value of an investment or a loan. So we don't always just care about the interest that we paid or that we're owed, but also we care about the original amount. So at the end of an investment period, if I invest money in something, I'm going to receive the original principal plus the interest I earned. Okay, so we call that the total value. So the total value is the principal. Principal is what we started with, plus the interest that we made on it throughout the term of the loan. Okay, so the first example we have is if a person invests $1,250 in an account that pays 5% simple interest, find the total value of the investment after 18 months. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of these things. 18 months, not years, so beware. The principal is $1,250. The rate is 5% or 0.05. And the time is 18 months. So remember that this needs to be in terms of years. So 18 out of 12 is going to be 1.5 basically, so, or 3/2. So if we divide those both by 6, we get 3/2. Okay, so we could also call that 1.5. Any of those numbers will work. You do not have to reduce. If you feel like you're going to make a mistake reducing, just put it in your calculator. 18 divided by 12 is 1.5. Okay, so just avoid those things that you know you make mistakes in. All right, so the principal is $1,250, and the rate is 0.05, and the term of the loan, or the time of the loan, is 1.5 years. Okay, so we plug this in, and we're going to get $93.75. Now this is the interest, and what we want to know is at the end, when we take our money back out of the bank, how much money do we make? Okay, so we started with the principal of $1,250, and then we added the $93.75 that we made on the investment. Okay, so that's the interest plus the principal, and this is going to give us a total of $1,343.75. Okay, so that's the final amount of that. And my pen glitches on 4s. It just does not like my 4s, so I'll fix that. All right. Now it is time for you to try it. So exact same kind of problem. Make sure you fill in the P, R, and T. Make sure the rate is a rate and not a percent. The time is in years. Okay, so this is the whole problem worked out. I just wanted you to notice that 15 months is 15/12 of a year, and you can leave it as 15/12 if you would like. So you're just going to take 2840 times 0.07 times 15 divided by 12, all in one big long step on your calculator, and get 248.50 as your interest. Then you're going to add the principal that you started with, the interest that you made, for a total in the end after 15 months of $3,088.50. Okay, in this problem we are looking at a little bit different situation. We are given the amount of interest made and the amount borrowed and the interest rate. And then we're supposed to find the length of time. Okay, so in this case I'm going to add one more thing here. So the interest is $216. The principal was $2,400. So they borrowed $2,400, so that's the principal, $2,400, and the rate is 0.045. Okay, so 0.045. All right, and the time is the question mark. Okay, so in these situations, as these get a little more complicated, I would recommend listing I, P, R, and T. Put the question mark next to the one that it's asking for. So it says here to find the length of time. So I'm going to put that in pink. Find the length of time. And that is the thing that has the question mark. Okay? So make sure you know which way to set this up. So we're going to have I, which is 216, equal to P, which is 2,400, times R, which is 0.045, times T. And T, we don't know, so we're going to leave it as T. So I'm going to let go of my colors here because I'm going to start combining things. So 216 equals 2,400 times 0.045 is 108. 108 T. Okay, now I'm going to divide both sides by 108. And I find that my time is 2. So T equals 2. Don't forget to divide those out. 216 divided by 108 is 2. So 2 what? Well, remember this is in years, so the answer is 2 years. Okay, so the next one is very similar. Give it a shot, and let's start by adding an I here. So I equals, and then put which one has a question mark, and fill everything into the formula, and leave the one that you're looking for as the variable, and then solve for it. Okay, so I highlighted all of the important information, including the length of time, as the question mark. Okay, so I made it a different color. The interest is 168, the principal is 1,600, the rate is 0.035, and the time is the question mark. So we're going to plug everything in, leaving time as the unknown. Bring these two together by multiplying and get 56. Divide by 56, and you get T as 3 years. So the last topic in this section about interest is compound interest. So this is a more realistic kind of interest that you're going to see a bank use. Simple interest isn't really used very much by businesses. So this is paid at the end of each compounding period. So you'll hear compounded daily, and this I'm going to explain what that means. So this is computed on the original amount and the interest previously charged, and this is going to grow faster. So if you've invested money, you want something that compounds more regularly. APR means annual percentage rate. Okay, so there's different compounding periods that you need to know, and the number of times compounded per year is what you're going to use in one of the formulas. So if it's annually, it means it is compounded once. Semi-annually means twice. Quarterly means 4 times a year. Monthly, it is compounded 12 times a year. And daily means it's compounded every single day, 365 days, times each year. So let's look at how we're going to do this. So how is compounded interest calculated? So that's what we're going to look at right now. All right, so we're going to start with $1,000 invested at 5% APR, compounded annually for 4 years. So we're doing annually because it's a simple example, but it's not very realistic actually. All right, so remember that interest is PRT. So we've got 1,000 times, they said that it's going to be 5%, which is 0.05, times once a year. So it's annually, so once a year. And that is going to give us $50 in interest at the end of the first year. Okay, so at the end of the year, we have $1,000, which was our principal, plus $50, which was our interest. So we get $1,050. So this ending amount is our new beginning amount at the beginning of year 2, right? So at the instant this year is over, the next year begins, and we now have a new amount in the bank of $1,050 because they compounded it at the end of the year, which means they said, okay, here's your interest, we're going to put it into the bank, and now it gets to make interest too. So now our new amount that we build interest upon is $1,050. We still have a 0.05, and we still have another year to go. And when we do the interest on this year, it makes $52.50. Okay, so now we've got our beginning amount at the beginning of this year was $1,050. So at the end of the year, we have the $1,050 plus another $52.50 that we just made this year. Okay, so now we've got it at $1,102.50. Okay, so now that's the end of year 2. Instantly becomes the beginning of year 3. So now we have $1,102.50 as our beginning amount in year 3. All right, so now that amount begins to grow interest, just like before. We have a 5% in 1 year, and at the end of this year, the interest that we make on it is $55.13. So now we started out at $1,102.50, and we now have another $55.13 in interest that we just made. So now we've got $1,157.63. All right, so it's growing. This is called exponential growth, by the way. In the 4th year, the beginning of the 4th year, we start out with that amount we ended with at the end of the 3rd year, $1,157.63. Now our interest is going to grow on that amount, $1,157.63 times 0.05 times 1, and that is going to give us the interest rate this year of $57.88. At the end of the 4th year, you can see where I'm going with this. We started out with $1,157.63, and we just made $57.88. Now at the end of the 4th year, we have $1,215.51. So when you compound, it builds on itself and it grows faster. So the amount of money that you make, which we see here, gets bigger each year. Okay, so this is called exponential growth, and the formula for this exponential growth is right here. So the final amount in an account paying compound interest is given by this formula. So you don't have to do this every time. This is the only time you'll see this. You shouldn't have to do it again. P is the principal. R is the annual interest rate, just like you've seen. T is the time in years, just like you've seen. The new one is this one, and it's important to understand how to use it. This is the number of compounding periods each year. So we talked up above about how to figure out what N is. If it's annually, you're going to put a 1 in for N. If it says daily, you're going to put 365 in for N, and so forth. Okay? All right, so let's try a problem. So let's look at example 5. And I've put the entire formula here for you. All right, so we've got $1,000 is invested, so that's our principal, in an account that pays 5%, which is 0.05, compounded annually. So this is an important number right here. Compounded annually means that we need to put in this is 1. Okay, so it means 1 time per year. So in this case, we just put a 1 in for the N. Find the amount in the account after 4 years. So 4 years is the time. Make sure it's in years, and it is. All right, so now the hardest part of these, honestly, is just putting them in the calculator. Okay, so we get A equals 1,000, that's the principal, times 1 plus, okay, 1 plus R over N, the whole thing raised to the power N times T. So remember this right here means in times T. All right, so make sure you've got that straight. The rate is I'm just going to leave out the first 0.05 over 1. Okay, over 1. So that's pretty simple. And then we're going to raise it to the power of N times T. So N is 1 times, and T is 4. 1 times 4. Okay, I'm going to fix that 4 so we can tell what it says. All right, so now the hardest part for most people is to put this in your calculator correctly. So if you don't have a graphing calculator, you just want to do this a step at a time. So let's take the first step. We're going to leave the 1,000 on the outside, order of operation. And in here we get 1 plus 0.05 over 1 is just 0.05. Okay, so we get 1 plus 0.05 is 1.05. 1.05. And then 1 times 4 is just 4. So now the easiest way to do this is to kind of work backwards on a simple scientific calculator, or you can just make sure you use lots of parentheses. So you're going to take 1,000, put it in your calculator, use parentheses, put 1.05 in the parentheses, and use the caret, which is this button, and 4, and that's going to raise it to the power of 4. Okay, so try that in your calculator and make sure you get this answer, because I want to make sure everybody knows how to use that calculator. And you should get 1,215 and 51 cents. Okay? All right, so next it's time for you to give it a shot. So here's one for you to try. I'll leave the other one up so you can see it. Pause the video and see if you can work this out yourself. Okay, so I've taken all the information out of the problem and listed it over here, which again, I really recommend that you do this part right here and don't skip it. It will keep you from making mistakes, especially as the problems get harder. Then you're going to plug everything in, work from the inside out, so you get 1.04 to the third power. And you should get 449.95. And I wanted to point out, this is not the interest. This is the total amount in the account. So this formula works everything out for you, and you get the total amount in the account at the end of the time period. Okay, in the last problem, we've just got a couple more problems here to go. If $2,500 is invested in an account, so I'm going to put $2,500 right here, $2,500, that pays 6%. So 6% is 0.06. Be careful, because a lot of people just plain old miss this and don't know what to do because there's no number. Quarterly, remember, means that N equals 4 times a year. Okay, so 4 goes in here, 4 times a year. Find the amount in the account after 2 years. Right. So we get A equals 2,500 times 1 plus R is 0.06, N is 4, and then it's going to be raised to the power of 4 times 2 years. 4 times a year times 2 years. What this gives you right here is the total number of compoundings. Okay, the total number of times that it's compounded. So 4 times a year times 2 years is 8 times. So there's nothing really magical about this formula. That's pretty straightforward. So we get 2,500 times 1 plus 0.06 over 4. So you're going to take 0.06 over 4 and you're going to get 0.015, add it to 1, and you get 1.015. So do the inside first, and then 4 times 2 is 8, raised to the 8th power. Then put this all in your calculator, and you should get 2,816 and 23 cents. Okay, so at the end of 2 years, $2,500 becomes $2,816. Hopefully this is encouraging you to save your money. All right, so why don't you give this a try and pause the video while you do it, come back, make sure you fill in these amounts here. Okay, so hopefully you found all the amounts that need to go in here, and the one that might not jump out at you is monthly. It's compounded monthly. That means n, the number of times it's compounded per year, is 12. So then you're just going to plug all your numbers in, simplify from the inside out. So 1 plus 0.03 over 12 is 1.0025, and 12 times 5 is 60. And you should get $5,808.08. All right. That was the end of this section, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.